Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a strange moment where your body just felt off? Maybe your arm felt weak for a few minutes, your words didn't come out right, or your vision blurred, and then suddenly went back to normal. If you're over 60, that moment may not have been nothing. It could have been your brain sending a quiet warning that most people miss. Today I'm going to share 10 silent mini-stroke symptoms, especially one almost everyone ignores, and knowing this could literally save your life. Stay with me. Mini-strokes are often silent, brief, and dangerously easy to dismiss, which is exactly why they are so serious, especially after the age of 60. Unlike the dramatic strokes we see portrayed in movies, a mini-stroke doesn't usually knock someone to the floor or cause obvious paralysis. Instead, it whispers. It shows up as a strange moment that feels off but not alarming enough to trigger panic. Maybe your arm feels weak for a few minutes, your speech feels slightly thick, or your vision blurs and then clears. Because these symptoms fade quickly, the brain convinces itself that nothing important happened. People tell themselves they were tired, stressed, dehydrated, or just having an off day, and life goes on as usual. What makes mini-strokes so dangerous is not just the symptoms themselves, but how quickly they disappear. The medical term for a mini-stroke is a transient ischemic attack, and the word transient is key. It means temporary. Blood flow to part of the brain is briefly blocked and then restored. When the blockage clears, the symptoms go away, sometimes within minutes. There's no pain, no lasting weakness, and often no visible aftermath. This creates a false sense of safety. People assume that if the body recovered on its own, then it must not have been serious. But the brain doesn't work that way. Even short interruptions in blood flow can injure brain tissue, and more importantly, they signal that the conditions for a major stroke already exist. A mini-stroke is essentially the body sending out a warning flare. It's the brain saying that something is wrong with circulation, blood vessels, or clotting. Ignoring that warning doesn't make the risk disappear. In fact, it increases it. Studies show that many people who experience a mini-stroke go on to have a full stroke shortly afterward, often within days or weeks. The tragedy is that many of those major strokes could have been prevented if the early warning had been recognized and treated. Age plays a big role in why these events are missed. After 60, people are more likely to accept physical changes as normal aging. There's a higher tolerance for discomfort and a stronger tendency to avoid medical visits unless something feels extreme. Many older adults also don't want to worry their families or feel like they're overreacting, so they stay quiet about symptoms that seem small or embarrassing. That silence is exactly what makes mini-strokes so dangerous. They rely on being ignored. The most important thing to understand is that a mini-stroke is never harmless, even if it passes quickly and never happens again. It is not a one-time glitch or a random fluke. It is a sign that the brain was briefly starved of oxygen and that the systems meant to protect it are under strain. Recognizing a mini-stroke for what it is can be the difference between continuing life as normal and facing a life-altering stroke that affects speech. Mobility, memory, and independence. After the age of 60, the body changes in ways that are both subtle and significant. And one of the most dangerous habits people develop is explaining away sudden symptoms as just getting older. When something appears briefly and then disappears, it's easy to dismiss it, especially if there's no pain involved. But the key word that should always raise concern is sudden. A sudden change in how your body or brain functions is never normal aging, no matter how small it seems. Aging is gradual. Warning signs that appear out of nowhere are not. Many people over 60 experience brief moments of facial numbness, a slight droop when smiling, or a strange tingling around the mouth. Because it fades, they ignore it. Others notice their arm or leg feels weak or clumsy for a short time, maybe dropping something or struggling to maintain balance. These episodes often get blamed on arthritis, a pinched nerve, or sleeping in the wrong position. The problem is that mini-stroke symptoms don't always come with pain or dramatic dysfunction. They come quietly, testing whether you'll pay attention or brush them aside. Speech changes are another example. Words may come out slower, less clearly, or not at all for a brief moment. You may know exactly what you want to say, but struggle to get it out. When it passes, embarrassment or relief takes over, and the moment is forgotten. Vision changes work the same way. One eye might blur, part of your visual field may disappear temporarily, or everything may look dim for a few minutes. Because it corrects itself, People assume it's an eye issue rather than a brain issue, but the brain controls vision, speech, movement, and balance. Any sudden disruption in these areas deserves attention. What makes these signs especially dangerous after 60 is how easily they blend into everyday life. Dizziness, confusion, fatigue, and balance problems are often accepted as normal parts of aging. But there's a critical difference between ongoing, familiar issues and sudden, unexplained changes. A mini stroke doesn't gradually creep in. It arrives abruptly, disrupts normal function, and then retreats. That pattern is the warning. Another reason people ignore these signs is fear. There's fear of losing independence, fear of medical tests, fear of bad news, and fear of becoming a burden. So instead of speaking up, people stay silent and hope it doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, the brain doesn't offer endless warnings. Sometimes the next event isn't temporary. Taking sudden symptoms seriously doesn't mean assuming the worst. It means respecting your body enough to investigate unusual changes. Seeking medical attention quickly can uncover treatable conditions like blood pressure issues, irregular heart rhythms, or narrowing blood vessels. Addressing these early can prevent devastating outcomes later. The truth is that ignoring small, sudden warning signs after 60 carries far greater risk than checking them out. Listening to your body, even when symptoms seem minor or fleeting, is not overreacting. It's an act of self-preservation, one that can protect your independence, your cognition, and your quality of life for years to come. One of the most overlooked and misunderstood warning signs of a mini stroke is sudden confusion or mental fog, largely because it doesn't look dramatic and it doesn't always feel alarming in the moment. Many people expect a stroke-related symptom to be physical, like weakness or slurred speech, but the brain can show distress in much quieter ways. A brief episode of confusion can feel like your thoughts are moving through thick mud. You know something isn't quite right, but you can't immediately explain why. Because it passes quickly, it's often dismissed as stress, fatigue, or simply having too much on your mind. This type of confusion is different from normal forgetfulness. It's not about misplacing your keys or struggling to recall a name. It's a sudden inability to process information that you normally handle with ease. You might struggle to follow a conversation, even though you can hear the words clearly. You might feel disoriented in a familiar place or have trouble understanding simple instructions. For a brief moment, your mental clarity feels interrupted, as if someone flipped a switch and then flipped it back on again. That sudden on and off pattern is what makes it significant. Because these episodes are often short-lived, people rarely mention them to anyone. There's a sense of embarrassment that comes with mental confusion, especially for older adults who value their independence and cognitive sharpness. Admitting that your thinking felt off, even for a moment, can be unsettling. So instead of talking about it, people rationalize it away. They blame poor sleep, emotional stress, dehydration, or multitasking. While all of those can affect mental clarity, they usually don't appear out of nowhere, and then vanish just as quickly. The brain relies on a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients delivered through blood flow. When that flow is briefly interrupted, even for a few minutes, the areas responsible for thinking, attention, and comprehension can be affected. A mini stroke can temporarily disrupt these functions without leaving obvious physical traces. That's why sudden confusion is such an important warning sign. It suggests that the brain didn't get what it needed, even if the body seems to recover quickly. Another reason this symptom is so often missed is that it doesn't always occur alone. It may appear without weakness, vision changes, or speech problems. Or it may happen alongside very subtle physical sensations that don't seem worth mentioning. When there's no dramatic cluster of symptoms, the event feels less serious. But the absence of obvious signs doesn't mean the brain wasn't under stress. Ignoring sudden mental fog can be especially risky because it may be the only warning before a more severe event. A full stroke can cause permanent cognitive impairment, affecting memory, judgment, and the ability to live independently. Recognizing brief confusion as a potential red flag gives people a chance to intervene early, address underlying issues, and protect their brain health. Taking these moments seriously is not about fear or overreaction. It's about understanding that the brain communicates problems in many ways, and sometimes the quietest signals are the most important to hear. One of the most dangerous misconceptions about mini strokes is the belief that feeling normal afterward means everything is fine. This false sense of safety is what allows so many warning signs to slip through unnoticed. When symptoms disappear, relief takes over, and the event gets mentally filed away as nothing serious. There's no lingering pain, no obvious disability, and no immediate consequence that forces action. Life resumes exactly as it was, which makes it incredibly easy to assume the body handled the problem on its own. But recovery of symptoms does not mean recovery of risk. A mini-stroke happens because something temporarily interfered with blood flow to the brain. That interference does not magically resolve the underlying issue. The clot may have dissolved or blood flow may have rerouted, but the conditions that allowed it to happen are still there. Narrowed arteries, unstable plaque, irregular heart rhythms, or thickened blood do not fix themselves simply because symptoms went away. In fact, the period immediately after a mini-stroke is one of the most dangerous times because the body has already demonstrated vulnerability. Many people are shocked to learn that the risk of a full stroke is highest shortly after a mini-stroke. The brain has already been tested and briefly failed. Without medical evaluation and treatment, the chances of a more severe and permanent event increase dramatically. The tragedy is that people often seek help only after a major stroke occurs, when damage has already been done and options are more limited. What could have been prevented becomes something that must be managed for the rest of life. Feeling normal can also be misleading because the brain is remarkably good at compensating. It can reroute functions, mask small areas of damage, and maintain outward normalcy even when something is wrong. That adaptability is a strength, but it can also work against us by hiding danger. Just because you can walk, talk, and think clearly after an episode doesn't mean the brain wasn't stressed or injured. It simply means it's working hard to keep things running. Another reason this belief is so harmful is that it delays action. People tell themselves they'll mention it at their next routine appointment or only if it happens again. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months. Meanwhile, the window for early intervention closes. Medications, lifestyle changes, and targeted treatments are most effective when started quickly. Waiting because symptoms resolved wastes valuable time. There is also an emotional component. People want closure. When symptoms disappear, it feels like the problem is over. Accepting that something serious may still be wrong is uncomfortable and inconvenient, but ignoring risk doesn't reduce it. It only postpones the consequences. Understanding that feeling normal afterward does not equal being safe is critical. A mini-stroke is not the end of a problem. It is the beginning of a warning. Treating it as such can mean the difference between continuing life with minimal disruption and facing long-term disability from a major stroke that arrives without a second chancely awareness and timely action are some of the most powerful tools we have for protecting brain health and preserving independence as we age. Many people believe that acknowledging a health warning automatically leads to loss of freedom, lifestyle restrictions, or dependence on others. In reality, the opposite is often true. Recognizing problems early is what allows people to stay in control of their lives for as long as possible. When it comes to mini-strokes and stroke risk, awareness is not about fear. It is about foresight. Paying attention to the body means noticing sudden changes and respecting them enough to investigate. It does not require medical expertise or constant worry. It simply means trusting your instincts when something feels off. Sudden weakness, confusion, vision changes, or speech difficulty are not messages to ignore or minimize. They are signals asking for attention. Acting on those signals quickly gives healthcare providers the opportunity to identify underlying issues before they cause irreversible damage. Managing risk factors plays a major role in preventing serious outcomes. Conditions such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and irregular heart rhythms significantly increase the likelihood of strokes, but they are also highly manageable when identified early. Medications, dietary adjustments, physical activity, and regular monitoring can dramatically reduce risk. These are not drastic measures, but practical steps that support long-term health and stability. Small changes made early often prevent large losses later. Action also means communication. Sharing symptoms with doctors, even when they seem minor or fleeting, creates a fuller picture of what is happening in the body. Talking openly with family members ensures that others know what to watch for and how to respond if something happens again. No one should face these risks alone or in silence. Support systems are not a sign of weakness. They are a form of protection. Preserving independence is not about denying vulnerability, it is about managing it wisely. Ignoring warning signs does not make someone stronger or more self-reliant. It increases the likelihood of sudden events that remove choice and control. A major stroke can instantly change a person's ability to speak, move, think, or live independently. Early intervention can often prevent that outcome entirely. There is also a mental and emotional benefit to taking action. Knowing that you are doing everything within your control brings peace of mind. It replaces uncertainty with purpose. Instead of waiting for something bad to happen, you become an active participant in your own health. That sense of agency is especially important later in life. Protecting brain health is one of the most meaningful investments a person can make. The brain shapes every aspect of daily life, from relationships and memories to independence and identity. Early awareness and action are not about extending life at any cost. They are about preserving quality of life. Taking quiet warnings seriously today can safeguard clarity, mobility, and freedom for years to come.